I've had a lot of great automotive adventures in my life. And one of the ones that I enjoyed right before my son was born, as I thought was like one of the last things to do before you have a baby, I got to do the one lap of America. And the one lap is this multi-day event that starts at the tire rack in Indiana, and then you go to multiple racetracks around the United States, one every day. You come back to the tire rack and you do the skid pad. It's a lot of fun. It's definitely a bucket list kind of thing to do. A friend of mine who, when I had my film car company in New York, we used to use his cars. One day he told me about it, and he said, "Will you want to do it with me in my Porsche 911?" And Ted had done it multiple times before in his Porsche, and before that in one of those macho Trans Ams. And he had a dynamite little SC that had a pumped up motor, and it was a lot of fun. I thought, yeah. And I asked my wife, I said, "Do you mind?" Because she's pregnant at the time. And she's like, "Yeah, you have one last hurrah." And off we went. And you drive with groups. So you do a lot of transit driving. There's a lot of driving. There's thousands of miles of driving because you spend a day at the track, you do a couple laps, you get some times, they add up the times, then you head off. And I was Ted's technically his transit driver to help him really cover a lot of miles between tracks. And we hooked up with a few great guys who would travel with us, and we'd go from hotel to hotel. And one of the really fun crews was these guys who were driving a Lotus Elise, and it was orange, and we called it the Skittle. And Sebastian was the owner, and just sweetest guys, really nice. And it was one of the cooler cars there, like definitely a great track car, like a Lotus Elise, fantastic track car. So we did the whole run. We did all the tracks, and we came back. And the last track before the final event was at Nelson Ledges. And Nelson Ledges is this ancient track in Ohio. And it used to be used in the old Trans Am races in the 60s and 70s. And I don't think it's been repaved after that. Like you drive up and there is like a farmhouse with a bunch of tires stacked on either side of it, and a small sign that says like Nelson Ledges, and you go in and the surface is all busted up, but it's a track you can rent, and it's a legendary old track. So we got to run it, and at the end of the day, we finished early. And Brock Yates Jr., who runs the one lap, great organizer, great guy. He's like, we have the track for a few more hours. If you want to drive on the track or exchange cars or whatever you want, have some fun. And of the cars that were there, I wanted to drive the Skittle. I wanted to take an Elise on the track. I've driven one before, but never on a track. And they're legendary because they're super nimble. They have a little 4-cylinder from a Toyota Celica in the back, and they're like a hot track car. So I get in the car with another gentleman, a friend of Sebastian's, and he's driving first. And I have to scrunch down to prove that my helmet's below the top of the windshield. And as soon as we get past the line, I sit back up, my head's sticking up. And we take off and we start going around. And the backside of Nelson Ledges is this kind of like sweepy back and forth area, and it's uneven. And we take a sighting lap. Next lap's a little bit more spirited. He's driving, and he starts going through, and the car is visibly just hopping. And as we come out of it, he's a little bent out of shape. Like he had to have a couple of real corrections. And it's a mid-engine car, so they can lose these things quickly. And he's like, I hear it going, we both wearing helmets, and it's open. So all I could hear was, and he's saying something over and over again. Comes back into the pits, and he's a little shook. And I'm like, you don't know how to drive, right? And I'm like, I got this. And so I get in the driver's seat, and I go out by myself, and I take the first lap slow, and I get the track feel. And the second time I go around, I go through that same section, and oh yeah, it is nervous. And I am like, okay, this is nervous but fun. And I'm like, okay. And I figured it out. I came across the top of the track, and there's a couple of rights before you come to the straightaway or the pits. I have to go for one more lap. Now, it's always the last lap of the day. It always is. And I go around, and I'm like, I'm going to figure out that rough back section. And I got it. And I'm like, yeah, I got this. This thing's on. Like, it's a cool old track. I'm enjoying myself. But I exit that section going 10 or 15 miles an hour faster than I had before. And I came into the final two bends on the top of the track, and I corrected and I put a tire in the grass. Most of the time, you can ride out of the grass area, but I was already out of shape a little bit. So as soon as I touched the grass, that tire gave up on me. The next tire went in, and suddenly I am 4 tires in the grass. Now, if you are in the grass at speed in any car, you are a passenger. You might have a choice whether you go in nose first or sideways if it's far enough away. You might be able to rotate it a little bit, but that's just a choice. So in my brain, I'm going, what's the most expensive part of this car, and where should I put it into the wall? Again, it's just tire walls around it, and they're not even tied together. It's just this mess of tires. And I'm like, ah, crap. The safest thing to do is to go in forward. So I don't do anything. Go in, you take your hands off the steering wheel. You'll see race cars drivers do all the time in Formula One and things like that. And what they're doing is you can't hold the steering wheel. It will break your wrists if you try to firmly hold on to steering when you hit a wall or whatever. So I took my hands off, boom, rode up the tires, rode back out again. And I'm like, okay, wasn't too bad. And put in gear, it's moving, it's running. Like, there's no smoke or anything. I'm like, okay. So I slowly go back into the pits. And Sebastian's standing there because everybody's in the pits and they saw it. And I get down, my hands and knees, and lay prostrate in front of him for forgiveness. And it had a lot of tire marks on it, and the headlight had popped out, and I was just a mess because I don't wreck cars. I don't wreck other people's cars. I had spent a career in film cars, taking care of cars and never damaging them for years. I was mortified. And Sebastian's the nicest guy you'll ever meet. And he's all like, hey, we pushed the headlight back in. It obviously wasn't going to stay. And we had to drive still to Indiana. And he's like, we'll take care of it. It's all good. And up walks the guy who had driven it the first time. And he walks up to me and he goes, you know what I was saying in my helmet? I said, no. What? He goes, it's not my car. It's not my car. It's not my car. It's not my car. And I'm like, yeah. And that has become a mantra of mine ever since that, ever drive anybody's car. I think that first. I had made t-shirts in Skittle Orange that say, it's not my car, it's not my car, it's not my car. And I sent them to Sebastian and everybody who was in the pits as a mea culpa. And it's never a great feeling when you damage somebody else's vehicle. And so in a lot of places, messing up a car on a racetrack is like a lot of people just walk away and they're like, oh, sorry, it happened. I was on a racetrack. I'm not that guy. So I called Sebastian up. He lived near Detroit, and I was in New York at the time. And I'm like, I'm sending a truck out. We're going to grab the Skittle, bring it to New York. And my film car painter guy is going to take care of it. And I'm going to fix the whole thing. Now, I had to sell one of my motorcycles to take care of it. But it's, you're a car guy. You are responsible for that car. You're responsible for the other person. It's part of who you are. So we brought it out. The front clamshell on a Lotus Elise is one piece of plastic. And I went online to look at how much they were. And I nearly had a heart attack because they're like $5,000 just for it. I just happened to get on Craigslist and look up Lotus Elise clamshell. And one popped up in New Jersey for like $500. And it was used, but intact. And I called my friend, who was over there. I'm like, just go over there and get it, right now. Not that there was any emergency. Somebody else is going to snap it up. But I got it for $500. We brought it back. It worked out. We finished the car. It looked great. Put all the stuff back on. I sent it back to Sebastian. He drives it to this day. And, took care of that. I took the clamshell with me. When we moved to California, I took it with me. And my little baby son used to play in it. And then I put it on Craigslist, this busted front end. And some guy bought it for $800. So, I think I made $300 somewhere and lost $5,000 in the painting part of it. But I kept my word, and I will always remember, it's not my car. It's not my car. It's not my car. Except when it's a rental car or a press car. Then you just change the inflection and it's not my car. It's not my car. It's not my car. And you have all the fun that you want.
Did you know that you can search Facebook Marketplace nationally? AutoTempest has a tool for that, but there's a couple tricks that you need to know. By now we all know that AutoTempest is the most powerful way to shop for your next car because they allow you to compile the results from all the major listing sites into one place. But after you perform one of their nationwide searches, scroll down to these links and click on the Facebook button. Now, once you've set your results to nationwide, you can follow their instructions and it will allow you to not just limit your search to 100 or 500 miles like Facebook lets you do through their site or their mobile app, but they'll let you instantly open tabs to the entire country and help you to find exactly the car that you're looking for. I just used it to find the cheapest Ferrari GTC4 Lusso on the planet, and I traded the CarTrek R8 for it. You never know where the perfect car for your search is hiding, but we do know that AutoTempest is the best way to track it down.